glorious fighting Buddha. Have you any idea how many would give their everything for immortality?
Immortality? For that word, all realms and beings have ruined themselves.
Black Myth Wukong was released in August of this year 2024 and is developed and published by Game Science. This is a game based on the classical Chinese novel Journey to the West, and before people come at me, I know it's the inspiration behind Goku and the original story of Dragon Ball because Akira Toriyama was such a fan. I know this before anybody comes in the comments and go, yeah, well, actually, I know. I'm a huge Dragon Ball fan and have been for like 25 years. I know, okay? Because I see that put everywhere. And I'm not comparing the two, absolutely not. Black Myth Wukong is a very good game. It sold 18 million units within 2 weeks. It's one of the fastest selling games of all time. I did not pick it up on launch because it came out just before Star Wars Outlaws, and of course then Space Marine 2 was just on the horizon, and I know some people are going to be like, what, you chose Star Wars Outlaws over Wukong? And yes, I did, because I'm a Star Wars fan more so than a Souls-like kind of fan, if that makes sense. And I still stand by my opinions of Star Wars Outlaws. I think it's a very good game, but it does have issues and problems, and I hope they do iron at least some of them out. But it is Ubisoft, so we will never know. But anyway, more to the point. Black Myth Wukong. I've been playing it all week, so after I beat Space Marine 2, I thought, well, I'll give Black Myth Wukong a try. I got it on the PlayStation 5. Now, this is more of a sort of first impressions kind of thing, but not. I've put like 25 hours into the game, and I'm about 54% through the story. I'm at the end of Chapter 3, and I have been having a very good time with Black Myth Wukong. Now, because obviously it's one of the fastest selling games ever, and a lot of people and a lot of more popular influential YouTubers and whatnot are touting it as their game of the year, I went into it with very high hopes. I was a little confused because it's a very good game, do not get me wrong, but it's a very odd kind of game, and not odd because there's obviously a lack of diversity, which I can't believe that. I can't believe that it was IGN or someone gave that a negative. It's based on Chinese mythology. I think it's as diverse as it needs to be. Okay, let's just leave it at that. But there's just I will get the negatives of Black Myth Wukong out the way first. Then I'll move on to the positives. And there are a lot more positives than there are negatives, and that's a good thing. Now, one of the biggest problems for me with Black Myth Wukong is the invisible walls. There are invisible walls everywhere, and it kind of breaks the whole exploring immersion thing. You're kind of like, oh, I wonder if I can jump up on these rocks. Oh, wait, no, I can't. I can't even get near said rocks, which was very annoying. And there is also some jank with the movement where your character will get stuck on some rocks or over some tree trunks or whatnot, or if you're trying to pick an item up and then he starts jumping over the tables. Now, one of my favourite games of all time, The Witcher 3, Geralt can do that as well. He can handle like a spanner, so I'm not completely holding that against it, but just making you aware that there is some slight environmental movement jank, because that's something I feel like I need to just mention. Now, there is also, in my opinion, I've played nearly every single Dark Souls kind of game and Souls-like game, like Lies of P and all that kind of stuff. Now, some of the bosses with Black Myth Wukong, in my personal opinion, and I have checked online and it's not just me, some of the bosses are just poorly designed for the way the game is intended for you to play. With the combat, now the combat starts off very sort of simple, but gets really, really cool when you unlock a lot more stances and a lot more heavy attacks and some summons and the spells that you get, and that's all very well and cool. But there's some, like a flying dragon, where it's just annoying. It's very annoying to fight because the only real ranged combat you have is getting a summon for like a rat archer, and that's pretty much it. And you can't use that all the time, so you kind of got to continually keep waiting for an opening, and yeah, it just feels a little bizarre. There's also, unfortunate to say, but it's on loads of games, so again, it's not a major negative, but I gotta mention it. There are frame drops, even on performance mode on the PlayStation 5. I suppose I better just, shell out £700 for a PlayStation 5 Pro with no disc drive. Yeah, right. That's not going to happen. I have noticed with the PlayStation 5 that even on performance mode with a lot of games, especially newer games, they struggle in a lot of places, and when you're fighting the bosses and things are going crazy with Black Myth Wukong, the frames do drop, which is not great and not really what you want. But also, another point on the bosses, which I've written down here on my notes, is that some of the bosses have this sort of infinite lunge, where it doesn't matter how far away you get from them, they have a lunge that is so fast you have to be hopped up on G Fuel, or have lightning reflexes, or just be a lot younger than me in order to dodge it, because they just smash you into oblivion. Now, also the camera angles during some of the larger boss fights is really crap. It's atrocious. And it can cause you to just have no clue on what the hell is going on. And also, back to the... Because obviously, I'm reading my notes, and these are notes that I've written down as I was playing the game, which I noticed. There is inconsistent edge invisible walls. And by that I mean, 9 times out of 10, your character cannot go off of the edge of a cliff or something. He'll stop and sort of go, woo, and look over the edge. However, sometimes when you're fighting a boss, all of a sudden, oh no, now you're allowed to go over the edge. It just seems, it's just very, very annoying. There does seem to be some cheat mechanics with the bosses as well, but then again, I'm not going to go too much into it, because I know there's going to be a lot of get good comments down below, and that's fine. I'm not an absolute pro at these kind of games, so that's, you know, it could just be me. But dodging feels a little odd. Sometimes it works as intended, other times it doesn't. I have looked online to see if it's just me being an absolute spanner, and some other people have noticed that it could just be the dodge mechanic works differently to it than it does in other Soulsborne and Souls-like games. But it just seems to sometimes work, sometimes doesn't. Even when I'm like, hang on a minute, I dodged that. I was rolling, I was mid-animation, and I rolled through that. Also, I've noticed as I'm getting towards the later half of the game, the stun locking is an absolute ball ache. You get stun locked a lot, and you just can't do nothing for a good few seconds. It's very annoying. However, that's the negatives. Now, all of that out of the way, Black Myth Wukong is definitely a very good game. It's a very, very cool game. The art design and the graphics are very, very cool. It looks really, really good. And like I said, with the art design, with the Chinese mythology, but also the Chinese culture and all that in there, is really, really cool. And the music as well is really, really just... It's just good. It's just really great. The combat, like I said, gets great once you unlock all the other stances, and you can upgrade them via skill tree, because there's a lot more RPG elements. So you can upgrade whichever skills you want. You can also put all your skill points back and then rejig them if you so choose to as well. There are a lot of bosses, mini bosses, and secret bosses that can only be obtained by obtaining certain items in certain places. So although there isn't a ton of exploration, because it is more on the linear side, there is still some decent exploration and some things that you can only grasp by big bosses breaking certain walls or that kind of thing. And and I know I moaned about some of the bosses being having cheap mechanics and being a little annoying. That's not all the bosses. A lot of the bosses are really, really cool and quite well designed in some places, and a lot of fun to fight. And they are just everywhere. It does feel more boss rushy than like Elden Ring or Dark Souls or Demon Souls or Bloodborne, whatever, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. And also, this would be a great starting off point for someone new to Souls-like games, because you don't lose anything when you die. You don't lose any experience or currency or nothing. You lose nothing. You just respawn and you can just go and try again, which is really, really cool. You can also craft different weapons. Well, you have the same weapon the whole time. You have the staff, but you get to upgrade it with different elemental attacks, and you can just keep upgrading it after you beat certain bosses, and you have to collect loads of different items for consumables and crafting and armor crafting and weapon crafting and all of that type of stuff, like different fauna, flowers, different metals, that kind of stuff. So there is plenty for the people who love collecting things, and you can gain certain special items that can be used to upgrade your attack damage, your damage reduction, stamina, and all that kind of stuff permanently, which is really cool. There are also different animated cutscenes between each chapter, and there are 6 chapters in total. They are very well done, very, very cool as well. I'll show a couple now, but I'm not going to spoil too much. And like I mentioned earlier with the rat summon, with the archer stuff, The summons that you do gain from defeating certain blue-flamed enemies and bosses are really handy in some parts. Some are useless, in all honesty, but some are really great and can come in an absolute clutch. Like, seriously. And there are some really great characters that you'll meet along the way too, which I'm not going to spoil, but there's a lot of dialogue and there's a lot of characterization and there's just a lot of cutscenes in this game too. There is a story. For any other bigger outlets that are saying that it doesn't have a story, that's not true. This game does have a story and it's really, really cool. I'm still confused on what that is. Like I said, I'm only halfway through the game, but first impressions on Black Myth Wukong is, I'd say it is worth picking up, especially if you are a Souls-like fan. Just, I don't think it's quite as good as Elden Ring and the other From Software games. It's just missing something. But if you are a complete newcomer to these kind of games, I think Black Myth Wukong is a great starting point because you can't lose anything when you die. But yeah, highly recommend picking it up. It's really, really cool. But please let me know down below what you guys think. And as always, thank you very much for watching.